The valley feels different, not louder, not brighter, just different. If you listened to part 1 and part 2, you may have felt it, that quiet shift beneath the surface. Something has been building, not with noise, not with sudden movement, but slowly, patiently, like ice forming on still water. Welcome back to the Three Rivers country. If this is your first night here, you have arrived at the perfect moment. You do not need to remember every name. You do not need to piece together every detail. Just let the atmosphere carry you. Because in this valley, silence is not empty. It watches, it waits, and sometimes it warns. Before we continue, take one slow breath in and gently let it go. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts loosen their grip. Let the outside world grow distant. There is nothing you need to fix tonight, nothing you need to prepare, nothing you need to decide. Just listen. The wilderness does not rush, and neither will we. In part 3, the stillness begins to reveal its weight. What has remained hidden is drawing closer. What has remained unspoken is nearing its moment, and yet the valley remains calm. So allow the rhythm of the words to guide you deeper into rest. Now, we return to The Valley of Silent Men by James Oliver Curwood, Part 3. Hiding, it should have had an effect, and she was. It was then that she had given him that splendid view of her amazingly long lashes, and had countered softly, "What if you should not die?" and felt himself suddenly aglow with an irresistible appreciation of the genius of her subtlety, and with that appreciation came a thrill of deeper understanding. He believed that he knew why she had left him so suddenly. It was because she had seen herself close to the danger line. There were things which she did not want him to know or question her about. Was it possible that Kekti himself had sent her for some reason which he could not even guess at? Positively it was not because of McTrigger, the man he'd saved. At least she would have thanked him in some way. She would not have appeared quite so adorably cold-blooded, quite so sweetly unconscious of the fact that he was dying. If McTrigger's freedom had meant anything to her, she could not have done less than reveal to him a bit of sympathy, and her greatest compliment, if he accepted the kiss, was that she had called him a splendid liar. Kent grimaced and drew in a deep breath because of the tightness in his chest. Why was it that everyone seemed to disbelieve him? Why was it that even this mysterious girl, whom he had never seen before in his life, politely called him a liar when he insisted that he had killed John Barclay? Was the fact of murder necessarily branded in one's face? If so, he had never observed it. Some of the hardest criminals he had brought in from the downriver country were likable-looking men. There was Horrigan, for instance, who for 7 long weeks kept him in good humour with his drollery, though he was bringing him in to be hanged, and Owen McTabb, and Le Bête Noire, the Black Beast, a lovable vagabond in spite of his record, and Le Beau, the gentlemanly robber of the Wilderness Mail, and half a dozen others he could recall. without any effort at all. No one called them liars when, like real men, they confessed their crimes. When they saw their game was up, to a man they had given up the ghost with their boots on, and Kent respected their memory because of it. And he was dying, and even this stranger girl called him a liar, and no case had ever been more complete than his own. He had gone mercilessly into the condemning detail of it all. It was down in black and white. He had signed it, and still he was disbelieved. It was funny, deuced funny, thought Kent, until young Mercer opened the door and came in with his late breakfast. He had forgotten that he had really been hungry when he awakened with Cardigan's stethoscope at his chest. Mercer had amused him from the first. The pink-faced young Englishman, fresh from the old country, could not conceal in his face and attitude the fact that he was walking in the presence of the gallows whenever he entered the room. He was, as he had confided in Cardigan, beastly hit up over the thing. To feed and wash a man who would undoubtedly die, but who would be hanged by the neck until he was dead, if he lived, filled him with peculiar and at times conspicuous emotions. It was like attending to a living corpse, if such a thing could be conceived, and Mercer had conceived it. Kent had come to regard him as more or less of a barometer giving away Cardigan's secrets. He had not told Cardigan, but had kept the discovery for his own amusement. This morning Mercer's face was less pink, and his pale eyes were paler, Kent thought. Also, he started to sprinkle sugar on his eggs in place of salt. Kent laughed and stopped his hand. "You may sugar my eggs when I am dead, Mercer," he said. "Do you know, old man, you look bad this morning. Is it because this is my last breakfast?" "I hope not, sir. I hope not," replied Mercer quickly. "Indeed, I hope you are going to live, sir," said Kent dryly. "Where is Cardigan?" "The inspector sent a messenger for him, sir. I think he has gone to see him. Are your eggs properly done, sir?" "Mercer, if you ever worked in a butler's pantry, for the love of heaven forget it now," exploded Kent. "I want you to tell me something straight out. How long have I got?" Mercer fidgeted for a moment, and a shade or two more of fur went out of his face. "I cannot say, sir. Dr. Cardigan has not told me, but I think not very long, sir. Dr. Cardigan is cut up all in rags this morning, and Father Leon is coming to see you at any moment." "Much obliged," nodded Kent, calmly beginning his second egg. By the way, what did you think of the young lady?" "Ripping, positively ripping," exclaimed Mercer. "That is the word." "Agreed, Kent. Ripping." It sounds like the calico counter in a dry goods store, but means a lot. "Do not happen to know where she is staying, or why she is at the landing, do you?" He knew that he was asking a foolish question, and scarcely expected an answer from Mercer. He was astonished when the other said, "I heard Dr. Cardigan ask her if we might expect her to honor us with another visit, and she told him it would be impossible because she was leaving on a downriver scow tonight. Fort Simpson. I think she said she was going to, sir." "Deuce, you say," cried Kent, spilling a bit of his coffee in the thrill of the moment. "Why, that is where Staff Sergeant O'Connor is bound for. So I heard Dr. Cardigan tell her, but she did not reply to that. She just went." "If you do not mind a little joke in your present condition, sir, I might say that Dr. Cardigan was considerably flayed up over her. A deuced pretty girl, sir, deuced pretty. And I think he was shot through. Now you are human, Mercer. She was pretty, was not she? Yes, stunningly so, Mr. Kent. Agreed Mercer, reddening suddenly to the roots of his pasty, blonde hair. I do not mind confessing that in his unusual place, her appearance was quite upsetting. I agree with you, friend Mercer, nodded Kent. She upset me. And, see here, old man, will you do a dying man the biggest favor he ever asked in his life? I should be most happy, sir, most happy. It is this, said Kent. I want to know if that girl actually leaves on the downriver scout tonight. If I am alive tomorrow morning, will you tell me? I shall do my best, sir. But it is simply the silly whim of a dying man, Mercer. But I want to be humoured in it, and I am sensitive, like yourself. I do not want Cardigan to know. There is an old Indian named Mui who lives in a shack just beyond the sawmill. Give him $10 and tell him there is another 10 in it. If he sees the business through and reports properly to you and keeps his mouth shut afterward, here, the money's under my pillow. Kent pulled out a wallet and put $50 in Mercer's hands. Buy cigars with the rest of it, old man. It is of no more use to me, and this little trick you are going to pull off is worth it. It is my last sling on earth, you might say. Thank you, sir. It is very kind of you. Mercer belonged to a class of wandering Englishmen, typical of the Canadian West, the sort that sometimes made real Canadians wonder why a big and glorious country like their own should cling to the mother country. Ingratiating and obsequiously polite at all times, he gave one the impression of having had splendid training as a servant. Yet, had this intimation been made to him, he would have become highly indignant. Kent had learned their ways pretty well. He had met them in all sorts of places, for one of their inexplicable characteristics was the recklessness and apparent lack of judgment with which they located themselves. Mercer, for instance, should have held a petty clerical job of some kind in a city. And here he was acting as nurse in the heart of a wilderness. After Mercer had gone with the breakfast things and the money, Kent recalled a number of his species, and he knew that under their veneer of apparent civility was a thing of courage and daring which needed only the right kind of incentive to rouse it. And when roused, it was peculiarly efficient in a secretive, artful dodger sort of way. It would not stand up before a gun, but it would creep under the mouths of guns on a black night. And Kent was positive his $50 would bring him results if he lived. Just why he wanted the information he was after, he could not have told himself. It was a pet aphorism between O'Connor and him that they had often travelled to success on the backs of their hunches, and his proposition to Mercer was made on the spur of one of those moments when the spirit of a hunch possessed him. His morning had been one of unexpected excitement, and now he leaned back in an effort to review it and to forget, if he could, the distressing thing that was bound to happen to him within the next few hours. But he could not get away from the thickening in his chest. It seemed growing on him. Now and then he was compelled to make quite an effort to get sufficient air into his lungs. He found himself wondering if there was a possibility that the girl might return. For a long time he lay thinking about her, and it struck him as incongruous and in bad taste that fate should have left this adventure for his last. If he had met her 6 months ago, or even 3, it was probable that she would so have changed the events of life for him that he would not have got the half-breed's bullet in his chest. He confessed the thing unblushingly. The wilderness had taken the place of woman for him. It had claimed him, body and soul. He had desired nothing beyond its wild freedom and its never-ending games of chance. He had dreamed, as every man dreams, but realities, and not the dreams, had been the red pulse of his life. And yet, if this girl had come sooner, he revisioned for himself over and over again her hair and eyes, the slimness of her as she had stood at the window, the freedom and strength of that slender body, the poise of her exquisite head, and he felt again the thrill of her hand and the still more wonderful thrill of her lips as she had pressed them warmly upon his. And she was of the north. That was the thought that overwhelmed him. He did not permit himself to believe that she might have told him an untruth. He was confident, if he lived until tomorrow, that Mercer would corroborate his faith in her. He had never heard of a place called the Valley of Silent Men, but it was a big country, and Fort Simpson, with its Hudson Bay Company's post and its half-dozen shacks, was 1,000 miles away. He was not sure that such a place as that valley really existed. It was easier to believe that the girl's home was at Fort Providence, Fort Simpson, Fort Good Hope, or even at Fort McPherson. It was not difficult for him to picture her as the daughter of one of the factory lords of the North. Yet this, upon closer consideration, he gave up as unreasonable. The word fort did not stand for population, and there were probably not more than 50 white people at all the posts between the Great Slave and the Arctic. She was not one of these, or the fact would have been known at the landing. Neither could she be a riverman's daughter, for it was inconceivable that either a riverman or a trapper would have sent this girl down into civilization, where this girl had undoubtedly been. It was that point chiefly which puzzled Kent. She was not only beautiful, she had been tutored in schools that were not taught by wilderness missioners. In her, it seemed to him, he had seen the beauty and the wild freedom of the forests as they had come to him straight out of the heart of an ancient aristocracy that was born nearly 200 years ago in the old cities of Quebec and Montreal. His mind flashed back at that thought. He remembered the time when he had sought out every nook and cranny of that ancient town of Quebec and had stood over graves 2 centuries old, and deep in his soul had envied the dead the lives they had lived. He had always thought of Quebec as a rare old bit of time, yellowed lace among cities, the heart of the New World as it had once been, still beating, still whispering of its one-time power, still living in the memory of its mellowed romance, its almost forgotten tragedies, a ghost that lived, that beat back defiantly, the destroying modernism that would desecrate its secret things. And it pleased him to think of Mirette Radisson as the spirit of it, wandering north and still farther north, even as the spirits of the profaned dead had risen from the landing to go farther on. And feeling that the way had at last been made easy for him, Kent smiled out into the glorious day and whispered softly, as if she were standing there, listening to him, "If I had lived, I would have called you my Quebec." It is prettier, that name. It stands for a lot, and so do you. And in the hall, as Kent whispered those words, stood Father Léon, with a face that was whiter than the mere presence of death had ever made it before. At his side stood Cardigan, aged 10 years since he had placed his stethoscope at Kent's chest that morning, and behind these two were Kedsty, with a face like Ray Rock, and young Mercer, in whose staring eyes was the horror of a thing he could not yet quite comprehend. Cardigan made an effort to speak, and failed. Kedsty wiped his forehead, as he had wiped it the morning of Kent's confession, and Father Léon, as he went to Kent's door, was breathing softly to himself a prayer. Chapter 7. From the window, the glorious day outside, at the vision he had made for himself of Maret Radisson, Kent turned at the sound of a hand at his door and saw it slowly open. He was expecting it. He had read young Mercer like a book. Mercer's nervousness and the increased tightening of a thing in his chest had given him warning. The thing was going to happen soon, and Father Léon had come. He tried to smile, that he might greet his wilderness friend cheerfully and unafraid. But the smile froze when the door opened and he saw the missioner standing there. More than once he had accompanied Father Léon over the threshold of life into the presence of death, but he had never before seen in his face what he saw there now. He stared. The missioner remained in the doorway, hesitating, as if at the last moment. A great fear held him back. For an interval, the eyes of the two men rested upon each other in a silence that was like the grip of a living thing. Then Father Léon came quietly into the room and closed the door behind him. Kent drew a deep breath and tried to grin. "You woke me out of a dream," he said. "A daydream. I've had a very pleasant experience this morning, mon père." "So someone was trying to tell me, Jimmy," replied the little missioner, with an effort to smile back. "Mercer? Yes. He told me about it confidentially. The poor boy must have fallen in love with the young lady. So have I, mon père. I do not mind confessing it to you. I am rather glad. And if Cardigan had not scheduled me to die..." "Me," interrupted the missioner quickly, but a bit huskily. "Has it ever occurred to you that Dr. Cardigan may be mistaken?" He had taken one of Kent's hands. His grip tightened. It began to hurt. And Kent, looking into his eyes, found his brain all at once, like a black room suddenly illuminated by a flash of fire. Drop by drop, the blood went out of his face, until it was whiter than Father Léon's. You do not mean..." Yes, boy, I mean just that," said the missioner, in a voice so strange that it did not seem to be his own. "You are not going to die, Jimmy. You are going to live. Live." Kent dropped back against his pillows. "Live." His lips gasped the one word. He closed his eyes for an instant, and it seemed to him that the world was aflame. and he repeated the word again, but only his lips formed it, and there came no sound. His senses, strained to the breaking point to meet the ordeal of death, gave way slowly to the mighty reaction. He felt in those moments like a reeling man. He opened his eyes, and there was a meaningless green haze through the window where the world should have been. But he heard Father Leon's voice. It seemed a great distance off, but it was very clear. Dr. Cardigan had made an error, it was saying. And Dr. Cardigan, because of that error, was like a man whose heart had been taken out of him. But it was an excusable error if there had been an X-ray, but there had been none. And Dr. Cardigan had made the diagnosis that 9 out of 10 good surgeons would probably have made. What he had taken to be the aneurysmal blood rush was an exaggerated heart murmur, and the increased thickening in his chest was a simple complication brought about by too much night air. It was too bad the error had happened, but he must not blame Cardigan. Must not blame Cardigan. He must not blame Cardigan. He laughed, before his dazed senses readjusted themselves, before the world through the window pieced itself into shape again. At least he thought he was laughing. He must not blame Cardigan. What an amazingly stupid thing for Father Leon to say. Blame Cardigan for giving him back his life. Blame him for the glorious knowledge that he was not going to die. Blame him for... Things were coming clearer. Like a boat slipping into its groove, his brain found itself. He saw Father Leon again, with his white, tense face, and eyes in which were still seated the fear and the horror he had seen in the doorway. It was not until then that he gripped fully at the truth. I see, he said. You and Cardigan think it would have been better if I had died. The missioner was still holding his hand. I do not know, Jimmy. I do not know. What has happened is terrible, but not so terrible as death, cried Kent, suddenly growing rigid against his pillows. Great God, mon père, I want to live. Oh, he snatched his hand free and stretched forth both arms to the open window. Look at it out there, my world again, my world. I want to go back to it. It is 10 times more precious to me now than it was. Why should I blame Cardigan? Mon père, listen to me. I can say it now because I've got a right to say it. I lied. I did not kill John Barclay. A strange cry fell from Father Leon's lips. It was a choking cry, a cry not of rejoicing, but of a grief-stung thing. Jimmy, I swear it. Great heaven, mon père, do not you believe me? The missioner had risen. In his eyes and face was another look. It was as if in all his life he had never seen James Kent before. It was a look born suddenly of shock, the shock of amazement, of incredulity, of a new kind of horror. Then swiftly again his countenance changed, and he put a hand on Kent's head. God forgive you, Jimmy, he said, and God help you too. Where a moment before Kent had felt the hot throb of inundating joy, his heart was chilled now by the thing he sensed in Father Leon's voice and saw in his face and eyes. It was not entirely disbelief. It was a more hopeless thing than that. You do not believe me, he said. It is my religion to believe, Jimmy. replied Father Leon, in a gentle voice, into which the old calmness had returned. "I must believe, for your sake. But it is not a matter of human sentiment now. Lad, it is the law. Whatever my heart feels toward you can do you no good. You are—" He hesitated to speak the words. Then it was that Kent saw fully and clearly the whole monstrous situation. It had taken time for it to fasten itself upon him. In a general way, it had been clear to him a few moments before. Now, detail by detail, it closed in upon him, and his muscles tightened, and Father Leon saw his jaw set hard and his hands clench. Death was gone, but the mockery of it, the grim exultation of the thing, over the colossal trick it had played, seemed to din an infernal laughter in his ears. But Healy's going to live. That was the one fact that rose above all others. No matter what happened to him month or 6 months from now, he was not going to die today. He would live to receive Mercer's report. He would live to stand on his feet again and to fight for the life which he had thrown away. He was, above everything else, a fighting man. It was born in him to fight, not so much against his fellow men as against the overwhelming odds of adventure as they came to him. And now he was up against the deadliest game of all. He saw it. He felt it. The thing ripped him. In the eyes of that law of which he had so recently been a part, he was a murderer. And in the province of Alberta, the penalty for killing a man was hanging, because horror and fear did not seize upon him. He wondered if he still realized the situation. He believed that he did. It was merely a matter of human nature. Death, he had supposed, was a fixed and foregone thing. He had believed that only a few hours of life were left for him, and now it was given back to him for months at least. It was a glorious reprieve, and suddenly his heart stood still. In the thrill of the thought, it came to him. Marette Radisson had known that he was not going to die. She had hinted the fact, and he, like a blundering idiot, had failed to catch the significance of it. She had given him no sympathy, had laughed at him, had almost made fun of him, simply because she knew that he was going to live. He turned suddenly on Father Leon. "They shall believe me," he cried. "I shall make them believe me. Mon père, I lied. I lied to save Sandy McTrigger, and I shall tell them why. If Dr. Cardigan has not made another mistake, I want them all here again. Will you arrange it?" "Inspector Kedsty is waiting outside," said Father Leon quietly. "But I should not act in haste, Jimmy. I should wait. I should think. Think? You mean take time to think up a story that will hold water, mon père? I have that. I have the story. And yet," he smiled a bit dismally, "I did make one pretty thorough confession, did not I, Father? It was very convincing, Jimmy. It went so particularly into the details, and those details, coupled with the facts that you were seen at John Barclay's earlier in the evening, and that it was you who found him dead a number of hours later, all make a strong case against me," agreed Kent. "As a matter of fact, I was up at Barclay's to look over an old map he had made of the Cappy country 20 years ago. He could not find it. Later he sent word he had run across it. I returned and found him dead. The little missioner nodded, but did not speak. It is embarrassing, Kent went on. It almost seems as though I ought to go through with it, like a sport. When a man loses, it is not good taste to set up a howl. It makes him sort of yellow Baptist, to play the game according to rules. I suppose I ought to keep quiet and allow myself to be hung without making any disturbance. Die game and all that, Then there is the other way of looking at it. This poor neck of mine depends on me. It has given me a lot of good service. It has even swallowed eggs on the day it thought it was going to die, and I would be a poor specimen of humanity to go back on it now. I want to do that neck a good turn. I want to save it, and I am going to, if I can. In spite of the unpleasant tension of the moment, it cheered Father Leon to see this old humor returning into the heart of his friend. With him, love was an enduring thing. He might grieve for James Kent. He might pray for the salvation of his soul. He might believe him guilty. Yet he still bore for him the affection which was too deeply rooted in his heart to be uptorn by physical things or the happenings of chance. So the old cheer of his smile came back, and he said, "To fight for his life is a privilege which God gives to every man, Jimmy. I was terrified when I came to you. I believed it would have been better if you had died. I can see my error. It will be a terrible fight. If you win, I shall be glad. If you lose, I know that you will lose bravely. Perhaps you are right. It may be best to see Inspector Kedsty before you have had time to think. That point will have a psychological effect. Shall I tell him you are prepared to see him?" Kent nodded. "Yes. Now." Father Leon went to the door. Even there he seemed to hesitate an instant, as if again to call upon Kent to reconsider. Then he opened it and went out. Kent waited impatiently. His hand, fumbling at his bedclothes, seized upon the cloth with which he had wiped his lips, and it suddenly occurred to him that it had been a long time since it had shown a fresh stain of blood. Now that he knew it was not a deadly thing, the tightening in his chest was less uncomfortable. He felt like getting up and meeting his visitors on his feet. Every nerve in his body wanted action, and a minute of silence, which followed the closing of the door after the missioner, were drawn out and tedious to him. A quarter of an hour passed before he heard returning footsteps, and by the sound of them he knew Kedsty was not coming alone. Probably Lepere would return with him, and possibly Cardigan. What happened in the next few seconds was somewhat of a shock to him. Father Leon entered first, and then came Inspector Kedsty. Kent's eyes shot to the face of the commander of N Division. There was scarcely recognition in it. A mere inclination of the head, not enough to call a greeting, was the reply to Kent's nod and salute. Never had he seen Ketzdy's face more like the face of an emotionless sphinx. But what disturbed him most was the presence of people he had not expected. Close behind Ketzdy was McDougal, the magistrate, and behind McDougal entered Constables Felly and Brandt, stiffly erect and clearly under orders. Cardigan, pale and uneasy, came in last with the stenographer. Scarcely had they entered the room when Constable Pelly pronounced the formal warning of the Criminal Code of the Royal Northwest Mounted Police, and Kent was legally under arrest. He had not looked for this. He knew, of course, that the process of the law would take its course, but he had not anticipated this bloodthirsty suddenness. He had expected, first of all, to talk with Ketzdy as a man to man, and yet it was the law. He realized this as his eyes traveled from Ketzdy's rock-like face to the expressionless immobility of old friends, Constables Pelly and Brandt. If there was sympathy, it was hidden, except in the faces of Cardigan and Father Leon, and Kent. Exultantly hopeful, a little while before, felt his heart grow heavy within him as he waited for the moment when he would begin the fight to repossess himself of the life and freed which he had lost. Chapter 8. For some time after the door to Kent's room had closed upon the ominous visitation of the law, young Mercer remained standing in the hall, debating with himself whether his own moment had not arrived. In the end, he decided that it had, and with Kent's $50 in his pocket, he made for the shack of the old Indian trailer, Mui. It was an hour later when he returned, just in time to see Kent's door open again. Dr. Cardigan and Father Leon reappeared first, followed in turn by the blonde stenographer, the magistrate, and Constables Pelly and Brandt. Then the door closed. Within the room, sweating from the ordeal through which he had passed, Kent sat bolstered against his pillows, facing Inspector Ketzdy with blazing eyes. "I have asked for these few moments alone with you, Ketzdy, because I wanted to talk to you as a man and not as my superior officer. I am, I take it, no longer a member of the force. That being the case, I owe you no more respect than I owe to any other man, and I am pleased to have the very great privilege of calling you a cursed scoundrel." Ketzdy's face was hot, but as his hands clenched slowly, it turned redder. Before he could speak, Kent went on. "You have not shown me the courtesy or the sympathy you have had for the worst criminals that ever faced you. You amazed every man that was in this room, because at one time, if not now, they were my friends. It was not what you said, it was how you said it. Whenever there was an inclination on their part to believe, you killed it, not honestly and squarely, by giving me a chance. Whenever you saw a chance for me to win a point, you fell back upon the law. And you do not believe that I killed John Barkley. I know it. You called me a liar the day I made that full confession. You still believe that I lied, and I have. And once again, the valley grows still. The trees stand quietly in the dark. The river continues its endless path, and what has unfolded tonight settles into silence. But this silence feels heavier now, not empty, not peaceful, heavier. Something shifted, not with noise, not with sudden movement, but with presence. A choice is forming, a path is narrowing, and what has been patient may soon demand to be answered. If you are still awake, notice the wait. That quiet wilderness has been watching, waiting, holding back. Valleys do not hold their breath forever. In part 4, the stillness will not feel the same. What has been distant may step closer. What has been uncertain may take shape. And what has remained unspoken may no longer stay silent, but not tonight. Tonight, the wind softens again, the darkness grows gentle, and your mind can rest. There is nothing you need to solve right now, nothing you need to predict, nothing you need to control. Let the questions drift, let the tension dissolve, let the valley fade into sleep. When you are ready, when the night feels quiet once more, part 4 will be waiting. Until then, breathe slowly, sink deeper, let the wilderness become a dream, sleep peacefully, and I will meet you again in the valley.